Well, good afternoon to you. I am Dylan Rattigan, and today, let's make an arms deal. The U.S. unveiling a massive, record-setting arms deal with our friends, the Saudis, the same folks who brought you no elections, cheap oil, oppressed women, funding for terrorists, and, of course, 15 of the 19 September 11th hijackers. What is this arms deal really about, and why do we perpetuate this relationship the way we do? Plus, the economy is a reality show, apparently. The president having a frank, unscripted, casual chat with some real-life, regular people. While cameras roll, reporters package a whole thing for the evening news, and they produce every aspect of it. But forget that. Did the president talk about real solutions or even the real problem with our economy, or any real ideas to address them? Reality TV sells better. Also, is momism the new sexism? Why working mothers get a raw deal from corporate America? The show starts right now. Well, the U.S. struck its largest arms deal ever, and it's with a country we know funds our enemies. In fact, it may be our enemy. We learned today the White House will offer a $60 billion aerial arsenal of state-of-the-art equipment to Saudi Arabia. As many as 84 new F-15 fighter jets, a smorgasbord of choppers, including 70 Apache helicopters, 72 Black Hawks, and 36 little birds, they call them, for sale to the Saudis. Also talk of supplying the kingdom with tens of billions more in naval and missile defense upgrades. The sale reportedly aimed at shoring up relations with key Arab allies in the Middle East, namely Saudi Arabia. But let's take a little closer look at our Saudi buddies, shall we? It's a country that routinely doles out floggings and amputations. Yes, amputations as punishment. This summer, for example, a 13-year-old girl was given just 90 lashes in front of her classmates for the outrage of having a smartphone in school. Women, of course, forbidden from driving. For that matter, can't do much of anything without a male escort. Cinemas, concerts in the society banned altogether. And, of course, homosexuality is fundamentally and completely and totally illegal, and as such should be punished by being killed. Yes, death. With friends like these, who needs enemies? And speaking of enemies, did we forget that 15 of the 19 September 11th hijackers were Saudis, or that the money that we pay them for their oil, they use the money to buy our guns to oppress their own people while they provide one of the top sources of terror funding. Here to help us understand why we would ever make this deal or continue to perpetuate this deal, and I guess more interesting to me, why the U.S. refuses to leverage in any way against Saudi Arabia by creating alternative energy, etc. Brigitte Gabriel, a terrorism analyst, best-selling author, and president and CEO for actforamerica.org. Brigitte, a pleasure to make the acquaintance. To what do you attribute the U.S.'s unwillingness to actually address the Saudi conflicts, problems, issues?
This is really concerning. It is so concerning that the president is not listening to the warning signs with Saudi Arabia. After all, this is the country that actually funded Osama bin Laden. They gave him money, the royal family and the government, to go do his jihad against the Russians. This is a country that exports two things: terrorism, Wahhabism, and oil. Actually, three things. I believe this is a very dangerous move. It is unprecedented. We have been giving weaponry to the Saudis for the last 5 decades. This is the first time we take such a major step in giving them such sophisticated equipment that can fall in the wrong hands.
Thomas Lippman joins us now from the Council on Foreign Relations. He's working on a book about Saudi Arabia's future and what it means for the United States to demonize Saudi Arabia or to demonize its culture. Not hard to do. The facts are largely well known. At the end of the day, Thomas, do you see an alternative path of engagement for the United States in the Middle East other than continuing to buy oil and send guns?
Well, first of all, I so disagree with the entire premise of the way you've laid out the questions that I hardly know where to begin.
Well, so where would you like to?
Well, first of all, we don't get a lot of oil from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not in our top 3 suppliers. Second, we have been a
That sounds like all the more reason why we should be able to lean on them to not be so oppressive, no?
Yes.
In other words, if we're not depending on for oil, why are we sending them guns to oppress their people?
They don't use the guns to oppress their people.
Not if you talk to, well, hang on a second, then why is it that only 70% of the people in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to own a home, and they have one of the lowest home ownership rates in the entire world, and that is because the Saudi government keeps the money and prevents those people from being able to buy homes, or for that matter, all the treatment of all the women and all the rest of it. What do you mean it's not oppressive?
Well, wrong and wrong on home ownership. I don't know where you get those statistics, but they're highly suspect.
Every statistic I've found that is not suspect, whether it is from Saudi sources, American international news sources, Reuters, you pick them, it's between 25% and 35%. The most recent quote is 30%. If you want to come on, maybe we probably should have done this in the pre-interview, because if we're just going to argue all the facts, the conversation becomes pointless.
Well,
do you believe that? So basically, you don't think there's oppression in Saudi Arabia, and you believe there is widespread home ownership?
Of course there's oppression in Saudi Arabia. Of course there's oppression. Saudi Arabia is not a free country by our standards or the standards of our allies in Europe. Of course not. But that's been true since the beginning of the relationship in World War II.
I understand. I know that, but why do we continue it, I guess, is my point. Knowing I think we've learned some information since World War II about the Earth. I know technology has changed. Why do we continue to perpetuate the same relationships that we have been perpetuating without analyzing the reality of how that may be destroying our own realities? Instead, we harken back to World War II, and it's 2010.
Because strategically, every president since Franklin Roosevelt has found it useful. The Saudis have been extremely helpful to us in fighting a lot of the fights that we have fought around the world. They financed the war against Cuban influence in Africa. They financed the fight against the Contras in Central America. They provided half the money for our fight against the Taliban, and they provided.
They also provided the terrorists and the oppression to create a lot of that. Brigitte, if you were to look at the unwillingness of the American diplomatic rhetoric to accept the nature of Saudi Arabia, what do you think what is it they don't want to deal with?
They do not want to deal with reality. They believe if we continue working with Saudi Arabia, they're going to be, continue to be our friend and help us with our war. But what war? The only reason Saudi Arabia helped us and supported us in fighting against the Taliban is because Osama bin Laden turned against them. When you look at the Middle East, you look at every country as a one-man regime. You are looking at tribes with flags. This is what we are dealing with. These are people that cannot be trusted. They export radical ideology all throughout the world. Now they're exporting their venomous Wahhabism out of the Middle East and into the world in different countries. They are setting up madrasas that teaches radicalism against the West, against the United States. They are calling to bring back the Sharia ideology, which oppresses women, oppresses gays. And these are the people that we are still calling our allies. When are we going to get our head out of the sand and realize they are nothing more than enemies in sheep's clothing? We need to become energy independent. We need to call the Saudis on the carpet and tell them you better control the fanatics in the Muslim world. Otherwise, we will not protect you, because what we're doing right now, Dylan, is by supplying the Saudis with these arms, we are protecting the royal family basically stay in power, because right now they are being threatened by Iran. They are not our friend because they love us and appreciate our democracy. They are our friend because we are protecting their behinds, and they are using us while they can.
What's wrong with that analysis, Thomas?
Well, it depends on whether you see the glass as half full or half empty. It's true that they do this in their own interests. Every country, every regime acts in its own interests at the end of the day. It's also true that there are a lot of issues involved here, not just the long-term stability in the oil market, to which the Saudis are committed, but the contest for regional influence against Iran, for Saudi Arabia's influence over some of our other, let's say, less reliable Arab negotiating partners. They bring a lot to the table. And for various reasons, including their persistence of opposition to communism during the Cold War, we have found it useful to, after all, Saudi Arabia is a country that basically was created by the United States. Everything you see there was built by Americans with American technology, including right down to the wheelchair ramps in the modern office buildings. And this relationship it's had its ups and downs, but it's been useful. It has been written, stated, declared American policy since 1951 not to interfere in Saudi Arabia's internal affairs or the way it governs itself. That has been our policy since it was written and sent out as an official government document in 1951.
I get that.
And that's still the case.
I guess what I'm saying is there seems like there's a lot of policies, from our educational infrastructure to our energy infrastructure, to a lot of our physical infrastructure that goes to 1951, our healthcare system, et cetera. And I don't know about you guys, but perpetuating something that's 60 years old when you consider how much has changed without reevaluating how much we may be destroying ourselves by hanging on to something from 1951 because it makes us feel good because of a favor somebody did us in the Cold War. I'm not even trying to be facetious. It just strikes me as an insane.
Well, we could have a serious discussion about this policy, but we ought to do it on the basis of facts, not on the basis of rants. And
I guess I just take issue with that. I take issue with that statement because you're saying that my home ownership fact is wrong. You're saying that
yes.
in other words, I sort of come on here and discredit not only my facts but Reuters facts, the Middle Eastern, the Saudi Arabian news agency's own facts is an easy way for you to discredit an argument on television, but it's a useless way to solve problems. I do actually appreciate the conversation all the same, and I think you're right that I think this conversation should be had, and I would like to have maybe you and I can get on the phone at some point, Thomas, review a set of facts so we don't have to argue about them in public and waste everybody's time, and then we can actually work the facts. It is a pleasure to meet both of you, and I enjoy the opportunity to have some of a conversation with you. Thank you, guys. Coming up here on the Dylan Rattigan Show, we'll review our facts in the future before we come on TV so we don't waste everybody's time.